Researcher Aimé Slangen was among the authors of the UN's 2021 Climate Change Report. Its projections for sea level changes were a wake-up call for governments and scientists.
I guess that was my real realization, like, oh wow, this is this is really bad.
Slangen is a climatologist who works at the Royal Netherlands Institute for Sea Research. So does Tjeerd Boma, an expert in the dynamics of coastal ecosystems, who's devised a wave simulator to help improve the country's sea defenses.
Adjusting the country to keep it safe on the long term, we are now at the stage that we need to learn how to defend our coast.
Their colleague Klaas Timmermans is also committed to stemming rising sea levels. And when it comes to reducing our carbon footprint, seaweed, he says, could be a game changer. Coastal ecologist Tjeerd Boma specializes in reinforcing levees or dikes and says there are still valuable lessons to be learned today from the North Sea flood of 1953. The devastation back then was more limited in places covered with a marsh grass. It effectively absorbs energy from incoming waves and dampens their impact, making cordgrass of acute interest to researchers.
Here you see a picture of, here you have the sea area, and this is the polder, which is now being flooded. And what you can see here is the green area is a salt marsh, and here there was no salt marsh in front of the dike. And you see
the flood resulted in 2 breaches here of differing sizes. This fragile-looking marsh grass has been shown to provide protection against floods, which, due to global warming, are set to increase in both frequency and intensity.
if you live in a low-lying country like the Netherlands, you will never be able to live there without dikes. But with sea level rise and accelerating sea level rise, the maintenance and construction of dikes will get increasingly more expensive. And to be able to keep up with the sea level rise, to keep our flood safety standards, to keep those up with sea level rise, nature can help us a lot. But we should not be dreaming and say, well, we can forget about the engineering, but we have to make smart use of nature in combination with engineering. And you can really see that the growing awareness of the problems with sea level rise also leads to a growing awareness that there is a need for a transition in how we cope with flood safety. And so there is a growing willingness to think about alternative solutions in which nature plays an important role.
Boma uses this wave machine to illustrate the principle to doctoral researchers. Levees without cordgrass erode faster.
This is the starting position. Well, I was trained as an ecologist, but I always worked as a kid already on motorcycles and all kinds of technical stuff. So I like to play with stuff. And we were very happy at the point when we were designing these that we had a technician that came from industry, and he was really good in pneumatics. So we were discussing how do we get something that makes waves and is cheap, because we don't want one perfect wave machine, we want to have multiple so that we can have replications, as variability is so important in ecology. So what you see is you get the big wave hitting there, and then the wave goes back and reflects it several times. And by the asymmetric movement of the wave pedal, we get a really realistic irregular wave. And that's the magic in these boxes.
The scientist firmly believes that cordgrass is a viable solution for coastal protection. The challenge now is how to plant the grass in mudflats without it being washed away by the North Sea tides.
It may be hard to imagine. Now it's completely dry and the water is far away. But in 3 hours from now, it will be completely flooded again. And 3 hours before, it was also flooded.
Boma and his team have developed an inventive and environmentally friendly construction for the purpose. A lattice structure made of potato starch.
So this will help us to widen the marsh and thereby
Exactly, yeah. So
better flood defense.
this is a clear test that if we can support the growth of the seedlings early in their life cycle by securing their root zone, then we can allow the mature plants to grow much deeper in the tidal frame, which means that the marsh can expand and be longer and have a more protective benefit for our dikes.
Meanwhile, on the global scale, there's a growing urgency to enhance coastal defenses and at the same time slow down climate change. And seaweed could make a notable contribution here. Among its champions is ecophysiologist Klaas Timmermans. He sees seaweed as an excellent meat substitute, and it comes with a big advantage. Unlike in the meat production industry, the plants emit zero carbon dioxide. On the contrary,
this is really the basis of the food chain. So organisms like this, they use solar lights, CO2, and form biomass. So it's the most simple way of forming biomass. They're really on their own. They don't need anything else than that. So it's the most efficient way to produce food. These plants, they grow in salt water. There's plenty of salt water. There's nowadays a shortage of fresh water in many areas. This biomass has many characteristics that make it very suitable also to use it as food for humans.
the problem here is that global warming poses a threat to all organic life, including seaweed.
Well, there are a lot of seaweed forests in the ocean, and with global warming, some of them just disappeared. So I want to know the reason that they disappeared and how much they can disappear to the polar.
Reducing CO2 levels is key to putting the brakes on global warming.
Sure that you take the same.
Politically, insisting that people abandon meat in favor of seaweed is hardly a feasible idea at the moment, as the scientists from the Royal Netherlands Institute for Sea Research themselves know. The generation and transportation of animal products is an area with scope for reducing greenhouse gases. And here too, there is a pioneering project in the Netherlands, a floating farm in the city of Rotterdam. Hendrik Kampen supplements the feed for the resident cows with surplus food from supermarkets, carrots, apples, and other unsold produce. Another contribution to carbon footprint reduction. The waterborne farm is based on the concept of maximum sustainability through recycling.
The manure robot is gathering all the manure which is inside the stable, and then it will bring it to one point. And from that point, we separate it in wet and dry parts. And with the dry parts, we make small pellets, which you can use as a fertilizer in gardens, for example. And the urine, we process it actually, and then we make clean water of it. It's quite high tech, it's new. It's also our invention. Had to do it like that. And then we can put it back into the harbor. All the water from the roof is collected, and it's going with those pipes here. It's going down. It goes to our cellar. There we have a system which cleans actually the rainwater, so it gets some dust and other parts